Hello everybody, Mas Poncianinho speaking here. Today I have a very special present for you. I absolutely adore this book. Let me say first, quero falar primeiramente que esse vídeo vai ser em inglês. This video being in English because obviously this book is written in Portuguese, so quem quiser a referência e procurar sabe que pode ler o livro em português. So this video will be mainly in English, okay? Now, I have a very special person in my life, which is my sister, Fabiana. She's a teacher. And apart from the fact that she's my sister, she's always been, you know, that person when you are interested in a subject and that person comes and gives you a book about the subject that you said you are interested. And very often she's given me things that are so precious because of content. Now, in this case here, is actually the book itself is really a rarity. So this book here is by Cecilia Meireles. Cecilia Meireles was a poet. She was a writer, she was a poet, she was a teacher, she was a painter, but she's more known in Brazil not just in Brazil, she's actually very popular. There was a phase in her career where she was extremely popular and known in other countries, more than in Brazil. This happens quite often, that an artist become more relevant to the country after they pass away. Now, in her case, of course, she became very well known in her lifetime, but there was a phase, as I said, where she was traveling and she was very respected. She used to go and lecture in America, in Israel. So she was born in Rio de Janeiro in 1901, and she died in Rio de Janeiro in 1964. So reasonably, she died young, né? And she became very important in the modernist phase of Brazil. Although some historians and some historians talk about her having a very holistic approach to her writing, a very holistic approach to her poetry, but very studied by philosophers because she used a lot of metaphors, you know, in that time where poetry many times where you can't quite see the line between poetry and philosophy, really. And she used to use a lot of the metaphysics. That's what I meant to say. I said metaphor, I meant the metaphysics. So she studies a lot. There's a lot of academic studies on her poetry in relation to psychology and in relation to the metaphysics and philosophy. So Cecilia Meireles, in her life as a writer, as a poet, also painted. And in this book here called Batuque, Samba and Macumba. Now, just the title itself, it's really beautiful. Now, it says his studies of the gestures and the rhythms in 1926, 1934. Now, if you study this video that I'm doing for you guys, will be mainly to show. I'm going to explain a few things. I'm going to show a few things in the book. Of course, I made some marks here of the pages I want to show you the most. But obviously, I'm not going to be reading the book to you. I'm going to just give a little insight of the book. And actually treat this not as an academic study, but you treat this as something that just excites me. Because it shows an attempt to explain culture and folklore also to the academics, which I think is fantastic. If you think about in her, she was kind of the first really recognized Brazilian female poet. So she broke many barriers there, even though she became more relevant later. As I said before, she was recognized in other countries. I mean, in America, she had a place where she used to come and lecture. So she was, what fascinates me about this kind of stuff is to look at someone like her at that time, against so many odds, creating works like this. They are related to the folklore, related to Capoeira and Samba, and trying to bring the magic all of this to other artists, to writers, to the intellectuals of the time, to the modernist movement in Brazil. So this is where you also see some of the wonderful parallels and the connections between Samba, Capoeira, and Macumba. Now, Macumba is a word that became a representation. I have studied this word before, and there are some sources that actually says that Macumba, it's actually an instrument, a musical instrument. But it became a symbol of candomblé, became a symbol of a word that represents Umbanda and candomblé. In other words, a word that represents someone that is involved in African, Afro-Brazilian religions. So Macumba is very much related to the word of the magical, to the word of the mysticism. And then Samba and Batuque. Samba, obviously, needless to explain. And Batuque, it's interesting because as I open the page, as we go through, I'm going to explain a little bit about this. She actually claims that Batuque was actually what really helped to originate Capoeira. Well, that's a very interesting insight. Now, if I just go back to the last page here, and I will then open the book and show you. But if I just also, what she's saying here, I come here not as an expert in this subject, but I come here I am tired to find paths so the people from other sectors can understand, other sectors of intellectual activities can understand things in folklore. Perhaps in a path that is more calm, more serene, and even more possible. I would like, so she's saying here, I'm searching that the people can find solutions for their problems and the comprehensions of their origins in folklore. That's really beautiful. And finds their identity in that is transitory but is also permanent. Cecilia Meireles. So if I give a little browse on the book now, I mean, it's just, everything is so stunning. Look at her paintings, her illustration. That is her signature there. One thing you're going to see from this is obviously the characters, the archetypes, I mean, this is absolutely stunning. Everything is moving, everything is, you can see the, another thing that I found is that almost every page you can find something that they are doing that looks like a capoeira movement, even though they're not doing capoeira. You know, you might be playing an instrument here or picking up a cigarette or something. This is very much the archetype of the malandro, the streetwise. She starts by talking about the baianas. Absolutely everything, every decoration has a symbol and something to really, I mean, look at that. She's talking about the baiana, she's talking about the things that the baiana is to carry in their heads, the food, the gestures, the kind of clothes. Let's remember as well, do you guys know, obviously everybody knows Carmen Miranda. Carmen Miranda became extremely famous, né? O tabuleiro da baiana tem. And that she became so massive in Hollywood. And Carmen Miranda borrowed her inspiration for her head, for the fruit thing in the head, you know, her head costume with fruit, from the baianas, which is something that a lot of people don't know, but this is where it comes from. And she became so famous from that. So now we have all these beautiful baianas, which I'm sure you want to see every single one slowly. But I'm gonna go into the first page that I got my little footnote here. Died with T, look. There's some calligraphy at the back. And here, now we have something so stunning here. And we start to see the samba, the references of the samba. He's talking about a rope that would separate the dancers from the people. A parade here. Okay, here we go. So he's really interesting because then we find the roda, a roda. Sometimes it looks almost like they're praying, right? This is obviously me looking at, but obviously they're not. There's someone dancing there. Now, here, what is interesting, where does the batuque and the samba come from? So she's saying, where does it come from? And I love the way she explained here. I'm translating quite raw, okay? So I'm going to go from this paragraph. She's saying, they both represent primitive gestures. So she's saying there was something before, and this is actually representing primitive gestures. Batuque can be seen as a ritualistic way to train the man's body for war. Now she's using war here, but not in war as we think of war. The movements like hummers and dry, the choreography of cadence and march with the characters, and then she talks about like singing and playing instruments and clapping the hands. And there's an important, a cool part here. Data por terra is when she's saying how one person will apply a kind of sweep, a rasteira, hit the other one's leg, and they'll fall on the ground. And then she talks about, in this part where she talks about capoeira, she talks about the understanding that the batuque, and we know that Mestre Bimba's father was a famous batuque person. He used to dance the batuque, dance fight, and obviously we can see how that would have influenced Mestre Bimba. So this part is really interesting, how he confirms from a completely different perspective, someone completely outside in that sense, in terms of where she comes from, in terms of her background, analyzing through art those connections there. On the image here, and here it's like a song, yeah? So she's writing a song in here, 1933. Oh, look at this here, so much. Now we have a pandeiro. In the game, also, we can comprehend the samba, a natural survival ritual, sobrevivência de ritual de casamento. It's like a marriage survival ritual. How interesting. And she's making some of the comparison that they play the instruments, the cuicas, caixinhas e chocalhos, the shakers. I can't help to think that there is something quite flamenco about this photo here. Look at that, just so much life. It's so beautiful. Eita Moleque, 1933. Now I'm going to fast forward to another page. There's a couple of things I really want to show you. I mean, look at this one here. Now here she talks about Macumba é uma cerimônia mágica, onde se procura praticar o mal ou o bem. No caso, é o canjerê, noutra o candomblé. So she's saying, Macumba, it's a magical ceremony where you can do bad or good. I mean, you can wish bad or you can wish good for people. There is another one I need to find. So these are related now too. Look at this one, guys. I mean, seriously. This is, for me, just fascinates me so much, this. How beautiful. How beautiful. It's one page after the other. Of beautiful illustration. I feel now that I should have some music playing in the background. And then we come to this. What a stunning art. So if you think about, by now we have a picture of these people with magic, mysticism, dance, samba, batuque, fight, dance. I mean, the richness in culture, in poetry, the richness in feelings that we get. I look at something like this and my hair really stands on my body just to... This says a lot. I'd love to hear your comments, guys. I'd love to hear how you feel about these wonderful illustrations. Now we go to the back here. And look, there's a few words here. Mandinga. You see? All of this stuff that we hear in capoeira. Because when I started this video, I thought people are going to say, what's that got to do with capoeira? But I'm sure by now we're starting to realize the picture that I'm trying to really make for you guys, that when you practice capoeira, that your heart feels not just this physicality, but that your heart can feel all this beautiful, rich culture that now we can hear in stories, we can see in books, we can study. I mean, I'm going to do another video another time, about this, São Bento. That's something else, I'm deviating now. But how many times we sing São Bento in capoeira, né? Ai, 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 São Bento me chama. And I want to explain to you these things. Because obviously, next time you sing, not only know where it comes from, but it's going to give you, as an artist, it's going to give you so much more inspiration to create. Look, newspaper. News. Now, here at the back, we see some photos of Cecilia. And here is Folklore Exposition initiated by Cecilia Meireles, 1948. Sorry, there we go. Bahia. So the first Congress of Brazilian Folklore in 1951. There's a story of her, guys, that is really interesting. Is that I might not be telling this story really accurate. I'm just going to show you a photo of her. But there's a lecture about her, and she started a library in the time of Getúlio Vargas, which was a dictator in Brazil. And she started a library, I think it's in the 30s. If I get the wrong date, I'll make sure I'll put on the description. She started a library for children, and the library was closed down by the dictator because he said they had inappropriate books, like obviously books that would brainwash the children. And it was nothing like that. It was her attempt to educate. She was a teacher. She's first studied to be a teacher. So there you are, Cecilia Meireles. Please let me know if you enjoyed this. I appreciate I'm not very good at this stuff. It's not my thing. I'm just always moving. It's obviously, I don't think this is about kind of reading word by word. It's just to give you what the book really is an illustration. It's paying a little tribute to her. I want to bring my library and explore this wonderful world. That's the folklore, or Brazilian folklore. It's what we do. It's interesting. When I studied in school in Brazil, just like school, not capoeira school, there was a subject that was in history, that was folklore. And you would open books, and part of that, it says Capoeira. Honestly true, I remember looking, going, this is so cool. I study something like it's part of our folklore. And again, as you open up more books and you listen to the stories of the masters, and now obviously we have some videos recording of that time, but there's a lot of these things obviously from the 1800s that all we can go by are illustrations and paintings from that time. So it's actually, this stuff is actually quite precious. I hope you've enjoyed, guys. Have a good day. Ashe.